What if I told you that the best way to teach our kids was figured out decades ago, backed by one of the largest experiments in history, but was then, well, mostly ignored? Today, we're diving into that exact story. It's about a proven teaching method, a mountain of evidence, and the powerful beliefs that stood in its way. You know, it all boils down to this one simple but huge question that educators and parents have been asking forever. What is the best way to teach? How do we make sure that every single kid, no matter where they come from, gets the best possible chance to learn and succeed? For over 50 years, the world of education has been kind of a battleground between two big ideas. On one side, you've got the sage on the stage, the teacher who directly and explicitly leads students step by step. And on the other side, you have the guide on the side, the teacher who sets up an environment for students to kind of discover knowledge for themselves. So this teacher-directed approach, think of it like a skilled mountain guide. The guide knows the path, they know where the dangers are, and their whole job is to get everyone to the top safely and efficiently. The steps are crystal clear, and the goal is always right there in front of you. The discovery approach, though, that's a bit different. It's like being handed a compass and a map with just the final destination circled. The journey? That's up to you to figure out. You might find a cool shortcut, yeah? Or you might get totally lost. But the idea is that the process of finding your own way, that's where the real learning happens. All right, so to really get our heads around this whole thing, here's our plan. First, we're going to look at the specific teaching method at the heart of this debate. Then we'll see the massive experiment that put it to the test. After that, we'll dig into the surprising reasons it faced so much resistance. And finally, we'll see what a half-century of evidence really tells us today. Okay, so let's start with the method itself. It's called direct instruction. But it's really, really important to know we're not just talking about any old direct teaching. This is direct instruction with a capital D and a capital I. It's not a generic term. It's a very specific, highly structured, and often scripted method that was developed by a guy named Siegfried Engelmann. And his core belief was pretty radical. Any student can learn anything as long as the teaching is perfectly, unambiguously clear. And this, quote, this is the radical idea right at the heart of it all. Engelmann basically flipped the whole script. He said, if a student isn't learning, you don't blame the student. You blame the instruction. The responsibility completely shifts. If the teaching is truly flawless, then learning is pretty much inevitable. So in the classroom, this whole philosophy looks like a really simple but powerful loop. First, the teacher shows exactly how to do the skill. That's the I do. Then, the teacher and the students do it together with lots of guidance, the we do. And finally, only when it's clear they've got it, the students practice on their own. That's the you do. It's a super clear path to getting it right. Now, this powerful theory wasn't just an idea in a book. Oh no, it was put to the test in one of the largest, most expensive educational experiments in U.S. history. This thing was called Project Follow-Through, and you can think of it like an educational Super Bowl. The U.S. government poured a ton of money into this massive experiment to figure out what actually worked for kids from low-income backgrounds. In one corner, you had all these discovery-based models, and in the other, you had the super-structured direct instruction. And the scale of this thing was just huge. We are talking about 75,000 students every single year in communities all across the United States. This was no small-time study. This was supposed to give us a definitive answer. So when the data came in, the results were just, wow, shockingly clear. Just look at this chart. That line going down the middle, that's the average. Anything to the right of it means a positive effect. Anything to the left, a negative one. Now look way up at the top bar. That's direct instruction. It's the only model that consistently puts students above average in everything. Now, look down at the bottom. Those are the discovery models. A lot of them, well, they actually had a negative impact. And here's the crucial part. It wasn't just about memorizing facts. Yeah, the direct instruction students crushed the basics, like reading and math. But they also came out on top in higher level skills like problem solving. And get this, in a finding that really surprised a lot of people, they also scored highest on self-esteem. Turns out, becoming competent at something makes you feel pretty darn good about yourself. Okay, so with such a clear winner in a huge government-funded study, you'd think direct instruction would have become the standard in schools everywhere, right? But that's not what happened at all. And this brings us to the central mystery of this whole story. Despite this mountain of evidence from Project Follow-Through,
DI is still not very common. Why? Why would the education world basically ignore such powerful positive results?
Well, the main reason seems to be this very powerful idea that researchers call the constructivist teaching fallacy. Now, it starts from a place that's 100% true. We all have to build or construct knowledge in our own minds. But then came this giant, flawed leap in logic. The thinking was, well, if students have to build their own knowledge, then the best way to teach must be to just get out of the way and let them discover it for themselves. It's kind of like saying, hey, a house needs to be built, so here's a pile of bricks and a hammer. Good luck. No blueprint, no architect, no help. And this philosophy creates some very real barriers in the real world. When you survey teachers, even the ones who want to use these evidence-based methods say they face huge obstacles. The universities where they trained push discovery learning. Their school districts offer training and materials that go against explicit instruction. And for some teachers, it even challenges their idea of who they are as an educator, a creative facilitator, not a direct instructor. But the story doesn't stop back in the 70s. The pile of evidence for direct instruction has only gotten bigger, which makes the ongoing clash between evidence and belief even more dramatic today. So, for decades after that massive experiment, researchers have just kept studying direct instruction. They've analyzed how it works for different kinds of students and different subjects all around the globe. Then, in 2018, a huge meta-analysis was published. It looked at the entire body of research, a full 50 years' worth. We're talking 328 different studies. And the conclusion? The positive effects of direct instruction are incredibly consistent and significant, time and time again. The researchers who wrote that massive review, they didn't mince words. They basically said, look, given the sheer amount of data we have, the fact that direct instruction works is something the field of education just cannot afford to ignore anymore. And that really leaves us with one final, crucial question. This whole 50-year debate really comes down to this. When we're deciding how to teach our children, what should be our guide? A deeply held, heartfelt belief about how learning should happen? Or the cold, hard evidence of what actually works?